So I'm currently around 70 or so chapters into the manga, in the middle of the JCC arc. I'm sorry, I don't know any of the actual names of any actual arc since I'm just sort of reading without any real structure, but that should be spoiler free enough if you haven't read the series and the three letters JCC mean absolutely nothing to you. And even then, it's not a major spoiler, so let's continue. In short, this story is one of those amazing series in Shonen Jump right now that has gone under the radar for far too many people, especially since it has yet to receive an anime adaptation. And I will not lie, it went under the radar for me as well. When it was first releasing, I saw the cover for it on the Shonen Jump app, and I thought it wouldn't be for me. I was going through a very edgy phase at the time. I had just caught up with One Piece and I decided to pick up Berserk. So yeah, major tonal shift there. But now, having just recently caught up with the Jujutsu Kaisen manga, I guess you could say I'm experiencing a similar tonal shift now, just in the other direction, since I am now roughly halfway through a great manga with action comparable to Jujutsu Kaisen, which goes by the name of Sakamoto Days. Quick summary first. The story follows retired assassin Taro Sakamoto, touted as the best in the business in his prime, as he tries to balance his newfound normal family man lifestyle as his assassin past comes biting back. So right off the bat, you've been provided with an overweight, middle-aged shopkeeper protagonist. A very far cry from your young and aspiring pirate kings and Hokages. And again, I think that might have been the main thing that turned me off from the series, Back then I was a naive 16-year-old fresh out of the COVID lockdown going to college. And now we are in present day. College has absolutely destroyed me and I'm now in my second year of university. So maybe Sakamoto and his shopkeeping appeals more to me now after life decided to mess with me for a bit. But in all seriousness, I think that Sakamoto being a middle-aged menace works really well because yes, Shonen Jump is targeted toward the young adults, or young adult boys to be more specific, but in reality there are people of all kinds reading these stories now, from children all the way up to the elderly, and probably a decent chunk of those people are such that they have grown up reading Shonen Jump or manga in general, I guess, for the past few decades, so a main character like Sakamoto might be a nice change of pace. And that's not to say there aren't your usual shonen characters. The main supporting cast is made up of younger figures, the most prominent of which is Shin, who I will get to later, but it covers all its bases in that respect, I think. But back to Sakamoto, I already mentioned that as an assassin he was the best back in the day, but even now, as of where I have read up to so far, he's lived up to that title of the best, even with the point being made that his capabilities have declined since then. 30% of his previous strength, I think, was the figure given to us. But he's still up and about, moving around, lugging his lubber and proving why he was the best. So he falls pretty nicely into the category of an overpowered protagonist. And it works, it definitely works, in no small part, in my opinion, due to Sakamoto's character itself. What I mean by that is that everything about him right now juxtaposes the title of the best. I mean, the contrast is clear for anyone to see. So from the top, he's an overweight, middle-aged shopkeeper protagonist. All three of those things aren't really associated with being at the top of your game. I mean, there are exceptions of course, like sumo and such, but usually you don't associate these things with someone's prime. Which, to be fair to the story, Sakamoto isn't in his prime. But add to that the fact that he is very reserved for the most part. I hesitate to say humble because I don't think that's it, but I think you can see where I'm coming from. And his final goal, his Pirate King, his Hokage, his Wizard King equivalent, is that he wants to keep to be able to maintain his mundane life as a shopkeeper in peace with his family. So it's a nice take on a very well-known character trope. And on his quiet nature, that as well is contrasted by the fact that pretty much everyone around him are loudmouths, be it Shin or Lu or Nagumo, but none of them are annoying, and I'd attribute that to the great comedy in the story. A lot of Sakamoto comes through his thoughts thanks to Shin being able to read minds, so whenever something is said out loud, you can always leave it to Shin to read Sakamoto's mind just to discover some wild stuff, which 9 times out of 10 is Sakamoto killing someone. He's letting his intrusive thoughts win, all the while wearing a standard blank expression on his face which itself is aided by the minimalist design of a mustache and a pair of round glasses. There's nothing about his character design that strikes you, that jumps out at you, but instead it's the lack of that jumps out at you, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But then on the other side of things, when he, this revered and feared assassin, is flustered, it's 9 times out of 10 going to be out of fear of his wife, which you cannot blame him for, because if there is one thing that all men collectively fear, it's going to be their angry wife. So in summary, this series is guaranteed to get a laugh out of you. And then next to the comedy, the action is the other major aspect and selling point of this series. The art style, I think, is really easy on the eyes when it comes to the action. Now, I'm no expert when it comes to paneling or different angles or compositions, but I have found it to be a very smooth read up to this point in the series. The pages don't feel cluttered or too full. I can clearly see what is going on, and more importantly, I can clearly understand what is going on. I think Dragon Ball is usually the go-to when it comes to the standard for action and paneling, but I will say that I think Sakamoto does a pretty good job at it as well. And that leads me to the art, which goes from nice art to amazing art, which does well to complement the tone of the scene, be it comedic, action heavy, or even a bit eerie. And talking about the tone of the scene, there is a nice chunk of slice of life obviously coming from the family man shopkeeping side of his, life, which once again I think fits well. It's not out of place. I think it works really well alongside Sakamoto wanting to protect his family, as well as with Lu and Shin, who, to put it simply, want to find their place in the world, which has ended up being behind the cash register in Sakamoto's store. It's a nice theme of family that spans through the whole series. All in all, I think you could give this series to anyone. It's a nice simple story with a nice simple premise, but one that everyone can understand and get behind. It works as someone's gateway manga to ease them into things, or you can give it to the most experienced, war-hardened weeb that you know, and they'll have a great time as well. As of chapter 70, I haven't felt the story drag, I haven't felt bored, and it keeps my attention, keeps my interest the entire way through, which I think is thanks to how simple the story is, but it's also a testament to that same thing. The fact that it doesn't take much for this series to grab and keep your attention. It doesn't have a huge sprawling narrative or any really creative power system as of the point I'm currently at, that is. But when I say I have enjoyed every bit of it up to this point, I mean it. Even the biggest series suffer from this sometimes. There's often a lull or a low point in the story, and even if that point becomes relevant later, it isn't the greatest in isolation. And I haven't felt that with Sakamoto. I would say take everything I say with a grain of salt since I'm only halfway through reading it, but I don't really have any doubt that I'm going to have a great time catching up with the rest of the story. But at the start of the video, I mentioned how I think this series has gone under the radar for many people, and I still think that's true. I still think that statement is correct. But I feel like, in a sense, I missed the hype train. Meaning that I think that this story already has a pretty sizable fan base, and with it already being almost 150 chapters in, I can't really say I'm one of the first people to pick up the series, can I? But I'm here now, and what I can say is that I was a fan of Sakamoto Days before it received an anime. I cannot wait for when this gets an anime adaptation, and I say when because it will, mark my words, it will one day get an anime adaptation. So yeah, Sakamoto Days, a hidden gem. Well, I call it a hidden gem. Probably at this point many of you actually know what it is, like I talked about a few seconds ago. But even so, if it does not have an anime, it can always have more eyes on it to get it to that point. Take other upcoming series that are receiving an anime soon, like Dandadan, which I am caught up with, which is amazing and which I should also make a video about, and Kaiju number 8, which I haven't read specifically because of the upcoming anime, but I am expecting big things from. I think Sakamoto Days is also one of those series that deserves it.